Deacon Mitzie Schafer, you're on. Only if you're on that side of the assembly do you get presents. Oh, she has more for the other side too. Thank you.
I want to take just a second to go off of my script and lift up the dominoes on your table. When the planning team for Assembly was thinking about, I love to tell the story, you know, you put a bunch of creative people in a room and you get all sorts of ideas that you may or may not want to act on. But the idea was that when we start to tell the story, it's not a single domino effect. It's those really cool paths of dominoes that wind all around. And when one story is told, it triggers more and more stories. And I hope that as you have been milling around Assembly, that you're starting to hear that domino effect of the stories that are being told right here in the South Carolina Synod. So now on script, I have 3 favorite children's books. I collect children's books. I think I got that love of children's books from hearing Pastor Mary tell stories when I was on staff so long ago. But Miss Tizzy is one of my favorites. Laura's Star, which I'm sorry you won't get to hear, but you can look up, is another one of my favorites. And Wanda's Roses is at the top of my list. Wanda's hope for that rose bush became a relationship deposit for the adults in her life. Her hope was contagious. And because of her hope, the community itself was transformed. So I ask, what do we hope for our ELCA? What do we hope for our South Carolina Synod? And what do you hope for your congregation? My colleagues and I get a lot of phone calls from congregations, and it's for one of 2 reasons. First, because they are at their wits' end and they are desperate for help to stop that downward spiral. Or because they have some amazing vision and the hope for making it a reality. In all honesty, you've learned I say what I mean and mean what I say. I used to get really frustrated with those desperate congregations. It felt like they didn't want to listen. But after a bit of time, I realized that it wasn't that. It was that the withdrawals that they had experienced, the downward spiral, was sucking the life out of them. They didn't have the energy to hear any message or idea or messages of hope, and they were being choked out by the thorns growing up around their pews and their altars and their hearts. There was a time I would have encouraged them to go straight for a strategic plan. With a strategic plan, you talk about who you are and your mission, where you're going. But I don't do that anymore. If you don't have hope, if you don't know your story, how can you identify who you are? So now I start them with storytelling. You can't plan without hope, but the stories can remind you of who and whose you are, and from that great deposit of God, new hope can arise. What I also realized is that these churches, like Stacy, were pouring from empty cups themselves. They were so bogged down in the business of church, trying to keep it going in the ways that had had impact in their lives then, so long ago, that trying to recreate that same deposit had now become a withdrawal. Pruning is biblical. We are called to cut away the things that no longer produce fruit, and the great gardener brings new life. When volunteer leaders in the church experience impact through a Sunday school class or a softball team or a program, their desire to keep that impact going comes from the hope of continuing the feelings that they had from that impact. Some people refer to those mountaintop experiences. When we have them, we want to stay there. We like to say that churches get stuck doing things the way they've always done them. But why do they do that? I used to think it was because they were afraid or opposed to change. But as I listen to more and more impact stories from congregations, I now believe it is because they are trying to recreate the deposit that they needed at a particular time in their life. And they want that for someone else. Another consultant and I were talking recently. A church that she is connected to used to take their youth Christmas caroling every year. And the pastor had called to say that she was tired and could not understand why only 2 youth would show up for such an important ministry. Well, how did you ask them? She said. And the pastor's response was, well, we put it in the bulletin. And we made an announcement in church. We're gathering at 4 p.m. for Christmas caroling on Sunday. She suggested that next year the pastor try something that sounds like this. When you leave your homes during the holidays, you get to see all the sights, the lights and the Santas and the decorations. The stores are all lit up. You get to hear the bells ringing and the laughter and the cheers of your friends at parties. You get to be with family and taste all the comfort foods of the holidays. But our shut-ins, they don't get to experience that. They don't get the sights and the sounds and the smells. So this year, we're going to bring it to them. We're going to bring them the sights of Christmas through our smiles and our ugly Christmas sweaters. We're going to bring them the taste of Christmas cookies and the sounds of their favorite hymns and carols. We're going to bring them Christmas and community. And we invite you to join us at 4 p.m. in the parking lot on Sunday. That year, 24 youth showed up. Relevance. And now they have stories from all of those youth and the shut-ins to share from that single experience. They have stories to share about how God made deposits on that first Christmas morning and is still making deposits in the lives of the members of the congregation and those who can't make it into worship. They transitioned a withdrawal message, simply informing people to do something in a bulletin announcement, into a deposit, into relevance. What they really did is connect them back to the relationship. Friends, if we are doing things that don't matter, that aren't actually impacting lives and helping people recognize the belonging and the welcome and the grace of God, then we need to prune them. Maintaining any system is draining and toxic. But if those things that we want to do actually matter, if they do in fact impact the lives of others and help them realize they're a part of God's great deposit, then we need to say it in a way that increases engagement. For this afternoon's action step and takeaway, I invite you to use your church communications, the same ones that you can use to evaluate from the evaluation tool that I gave you yesterday. I want you to lay them out on the table with a group, and I want you to read the words that are on the page. Do you understand the words that I am telling you, right? Read the actual words. And then I want you to ask yourself, is the thing you're asking people to do, is it for maintenance? Or is it to help them grow in their faith and recognize God's great deposit in their life? And then I want you to do a really scary thing. I want your counsel to look at the answers. Anything that says maintain next to it, I want you to prayerfully consider if that is something in your congregation that needs pruning. I know, 10 seconds of courage. I'm asking you for 10 seconds of courage to get started in the conversation. But if you can write growth next to it, if you can write impact next to it, if you can justify that it matches the Christmas caroling relevance, then I want you to talk about how you can add deposit language, how you can identify that relevance and use that message to invite people into the relationship and the ministry that needs to happen, that you're being called to do. 10 seconds of courage. Is it maintenance? Does it need pruning? Is it growth? Do we just need to change the way we talk about it? That's your takeaway for this afternoon. Tomorrow, when we gather in the morning, I invite you to have your little notebook that was in your bag and a pen. The entire session in the morning will be action steps and takeaways. So fair word of warning. Thanks.